Time. It's a valuable thing. You can watch it go by as a pendulum swings. It counts down to the end of the day. Clocks tick life away. It's so unreal. Time dictates a lot about life. When we wake up, when we eat, when we go to jobs, school, or meet with family and friends. There is much that can and does get placed in the hands of time. As I get older, I find time to feel as though it's slipping on by, and I have almost no say in how quickly it passes. I remember things as a kid, and that feeling of how stuff would just kinda drag on. Man, what I wouldn't give for that feeling now. Today I have a much more appreciative understanding of how time works and feels, to me at least. I feel that can be the case for most people around my age, or maybe even older. Funnily enough, though, time as we understand it only exists because, well, we made it up. Before humans tried to dictate days, time was a loose and free-flowing kind of thing. Ages passed by for hundreds, thousands of eons with little reverence and much less understanding. In the grand scheme of things, time is a very recent revelation. Here we go then, talking about something that exists and yet doesn't at the same time. What would happen if seasons just stopped? Time, as we understand it, just stopped. Or, more interestingly, what if something or someone went back hundreds of years into the past and changed certain events? Would we know? What separates our reality from time? Or maybe time from reality? Do we live in a consistent timeline with no deviations? Or is this kind of like a multiverse kind of idea, where each decision branches off into its own thing? Sadly, we may never really know. Maybe when you decided to hit snooze on your alarm for the 5th time, and every time before that, you made yourself a new timeline. Regardless, though, time continues its unrelenting march forward, and we all go along for the ride, one way or another. Even when time feels like it's at a standstill, is it really? How's it going, everyone? My name is Leon, and I want to welcome you all back to the Zelda retrospective. Hey, did you like Link's Awakening? If so, then you got a lot to look forward to here. If not, well, hey, at least you had a break with the new 3D titles, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Maybe those were more your speed. For you 2D fans, though, 2 linked games released on the same day? That's pretty awesome. Alright, remember when I said, for better or for worse, this game set into practice something that would very nearly define almost every Zelda game from here on out. We even see this in Tears of the Kingdom to a degree. Dual worlds. Well, Capcom took that to heart and really stretched it out to the logical extreme. There are 2 worlds, and within those 2 worlds are, well, even more. You can thank the fact that this was a project that crossed over 2 games for that. That said, if you thought that was the only way to get to other worlds, well, this game technically has 2 worlds, but it'd be more accurate to say 2 times, really. A present day and an era that is 400 years ago, give or take. Out of the 2 Oracle games, this one has the most original content. While Seasons borrows a lot from the original Zelda and Link's Awakening, this one really only takes enemies from Link's Awakening and arguably the time travel idea from Ocarina of Time. Though, the time travel here works much, much differently. Let's talk new additions. One of the first things you'll notice that really sticks out a bunch is the inclusion of animal buddies. Capcom really went all in on this idea. It's not really the worst thing they could have added, but certainly it's odd for sure. They don't necessarily appear right away, but they do have an impact on the gameplay. The first one you meet is Moosh, the flying bear. Moosh is being attacked, and once you save them, they help you get to an area you otherwise really couldn't, by allowing you to hover over holes in the ground. You can also attack with a ground pound, but honestly Moosh is more about travel. Overall, a pretty solid buddy to have. Next up you encounter Ricky, and help him find his lost gloves. Ricky can jump over holes and up steep cliffs. This is how you get to Tingle. Yeah, Tingle. Not really sure how he ended up here, but hey, there he is. Ricky is the most combat focused and can attack with punches like a boxer would. He can even hold the attack for a whirlwind punch. It's pretty alright. Lastly, we have Dimitri the dinosaur, or maybe Dodongo? I'm not really sure. But he swims in deep water and can bite things, but I mean, that's really about it. Like Moosh, he's more about travel than actually fighting anything. To really use these animal buddies over your journey through Holodrum, Labrynna, you might encounter their flutes. If you don't find any, eventually you'll be forced to get one when you accidentally buy it from the shop. Rescue Moosh from the fairies in the Enchanted Forest. This is what happened to me, so if you like the trial runs with one of the others more, be sure to try and track down their flutes, otherwise you're gonna wind up with Moosh, which, I mean, you know, it's not bad, but if you had a preference, then you're kinda out of luck. Just be aware that whichever animal buddy you get will be with you for the rest of the adventure. They end up following you to Holodrum. One of the other new things that you can find pretty much right away if you bother to check the town are rings. Rings are like little bonuses you can give yourself if you bother to go looking for some of them. And, well, this game has a ton of them, and they can be found just about anywhere. It's actually a pretty great way to talk about some of the other new additions to the game. Don't worry, we'll circle back to the rings. One of which are these Gasha seeds. You can plant these around town, and based on how many monsters you slay, it's 30, by the way, and you can come back and get a Gasha nut. These have a list of things inside. Money, items, rings, and perhaps more upsettingly, a piece of heart. Yeah, RNG. It's great, isn't it? Another new thing is the addition of the Witch Maple. Much like the Gasha tree, if you slay 30 monsters, Maple will fly in and bump into you. She drops a lot of the same stuff that you can find in Gasha nuts, but there is some risk here. Maple will try to secure her things and take some of yours. Yeah, Link also drops items as well, but it's never anything super important. If you end up collecting more than her, she'll yell at you and fly away. If she ends up collecting more than you, she'll make fun of you and then, well, fly off. If you consistently get more stuff than her, she will use more insane ways to gather her things. Originally, she starts out with a broom, and after a while will upgrade to a vacuum, and lastly, a UFO. That requires some swift feet. If you want the good stuff from Maple, you'll have to be very quick and very careful. She can pop up on just about any screen, and some are a little better for dealing with her than others. And just as a heads up, she goes for the highest value item first, every time. That includes rings, potions, and of course, a piece of heart. I spent so much time killing monsters for Maple to drop that stupid heart piece. It took at least 2 hours for me. Luckily for me, it didn't really take all that long to get the pieces of heart from both the tree and Maple, though something like that honestly shouldn't be left to RNG. That said, you can mitigate that a touch with some rings. one to lower the monster count for each thing, a maple ring and the Gasha ring. They cut the kill count in half from 30 to 15, so, I mean, there is a way, but man, that still really sucks. Not a fan of the RNG heart pieces, at least, not like this. Some other games have done similar things, but those usually involve a minigame where you have at least some control. Here, it's all RNG all the time. Once you collect some rings, either from the trees or Maple, or really just out in the world, you gotta take them back to this guy here, Vasu. He appraises the rings for you at 20 rupees a pop. Not bad, really. If you end up getting duplicates, and, well, you will, he'll buy those off you for 30 rupees, so getting them looked at is never really a bad thing. He ends up giving you your first ring box, which fits just one ring. You can upgrade that later to a box that holds 3. With that secret, you can upgrade to a third box, and it holds 5 rings. This game has a ton of rings to collect and use. Some of them have only minor gameplay changes, others can, well, drastically change how you end up playing. Only certain rings appear in this land, and you'll have to keep an eye out. That kinda just about does it for new mechanic type things. Certain items in this game get upgrades. The Zora Flippers, for example, can upgrade its passive abilities to be a mermaid suit, and this lets Link swim in the deep ocean. It even opens up some side-scrolling bits out there. A neat idea, but swimming is almost never really a high point in a Zelda game, Other new items include the seeds. Each one has some unique properties to it. Ember can burn things, scent seeds attract enemies, Gale seeds act as a teleport, and the Pegasus ones, well, those behave basically the same as the boots from prior Zelda games. And the mystery seeds are, well, they do some stuff. Mostly used for the bird statues you'll find around, but they have other mysterious uses, you see. You can toss those in the satchel you get, or you can use the slingshot, the seed shooter, to bounce them around corners and do all kinds of fun stuff like that. The most important item you'll get, however, is the Rod of Seasons, the Harp of Ages. It allows you to change the seasons in the current area, the time period you're in, and you'll end up getting 4 seasons. 3 songs at your disposal once you find them. Each song allows Link to time travel in different ways. The first song is the Tune of Echoes. Stand atop these tree stumps, and it opens up these squiggly looking tiles and activates a one-way time portal. The second song, Tune of Currents, lets Link make a personal time portal, but only in the past that brings him to the present. It leaves behind a nice little glowing ring, though, that acts like the magic mirror from A Link to the Past. Stepping on it brings you back to the past and in that same spot. The last song, Tune of Ages, allows for time travel anywhere at any time, provided the spot you start on doesn't have any obstacles. The best of the best in terms of navigating the changed landscape. These are very important, as they can help you solve a bunch of overworld puzzles, some of which are needed to progress the game. It's time to start thinking with portals. I suppose this is as good a time as any to talk about the major focus on puzzles in this game. Unlike Seasons, which focuses more on the adventure and combat, this game is more puzzle-based. Which makes thematically the most sense, right? Like, changing seasons is a great idea and all, but the applications might be a bit limited on how one can make a puzzle. Time travel, though, opens up a lot of doors, not only for puzzles in the moment, but at multiple times in this game, you'll need to do something in the past that sets up for an outcome in the present timeline. This kind of thing happens all the time. That's not to say Seasons didn't try with the puzzles, but they were a little more simplistic in design. I guess that was the intent of the developers, huh? One more straightforward and one a bit more, obtuse? Who can say, though, really? At the end of it all, in my opinion anyway, this is the better of the two games. Some other notable items include the switch hook, which defies physics to end up swapping places with just about anything that you hit it with. And then there's the returning cane of Samaria, which just whips up a magical block. I mean, it has its uses, but honestly, they're kinda limited. Like in other games, this one has a helper, the Maku tree. Once you clear a dungeon, the tree will give advice on where to go and what to do next. This tree has a few different leaf types for whatever age you're in, which is kind of a nice touch. If you ever forget what to do, you can visit the tree and she'll point you in the right direction. It's great if you end up taking a break at some point. The tree also has in its foliage some pickups if you need them. Berries for healing and other small items like seeds. You can also find Faeror here, the Oracle of Secrets. She doesn't have anything for you. She keeps all the secrets. Just yet, but you will want to know she's here. All in all, this is your typical Zelda adventure, right? Collect the 8 relics, in this case the essences of nature, time, and find your way to each of the dungeons and do what you do best. When all is said and done, well, I guess we'll just leave that for the story section, yeah? This game does a lot with its time travel gimmick. Some of it is somewhat complicated, like the trading sequence. Yeah, that's back, and it involves traveling through time to get the right items to the right people. Some things are decidedly less difficult, like the jewel hunt, the hunt for the shovel items. But perhaps nothing is more emblematic of time travel than the Tarm Ruins Crescent Island story bit. This one's a nice little vertical slice of gameplay, and it'll tell you exactly how this game is meant to be played. They end up taking away all your items, and it's up for you to collect them all back. Some will be easy, just, walk a couple screens, but others will have you setting up seed pods to climb to vines in the present era. You'll have to find and plant a seed tree sapling so you can trade for your items back. You gotta end up traveling through time to sneak into a cuckoo hut, and so much more. If that wasn't enough, at the end of it all, you have a dungeon to explore afterward, and it's not necessarily an easy one either. The whole game, I feel, ramps up too and just about hits its stride with this Crescent Island bit. This is a test of not only your skill, but also your wit. I still don't know how I did this running on nothing but 2 AA's in a dream, but, In fact, this whole game is one that, looking back on my experience, I am kinda proud of. Is it the most difficult puzzle game out there? No, not by a long shot. But man, it asks a lot from its players, especially somebody new to the world of Zelda. The rest of the game also kinda gets a bit out there with the time-traveling shenanigans, and there's only one other spot that takes it to this extreme. Other than that, though, once you get that final song on the harp, you can solve a lot of these would-be puzzles with almost no effort. Still, though, that Crescent Island sequence will stick with me as one of the more difficult things to figure out as a child. Even now, while I didn't struggle with it, it left me scratching my head a bit. Cut me some slack, okay? It's been like, 20 years? Oh, I hate that. Yeah, okay, it's been about that long since I've played this last, so, while I have a vague recollection of the events, I still gotta fight through years' worth of newer memories, One thing that's pretty fun about this game is it's only one part of a greater whole. To get the full experience, you're gonna have to play the other half. For as robust as this game is, and honestly it does have a lot going on for it, it's still only half the adventure. You can just play them as single adventures, but if you have access to both titles, and if you have the original copies, which, good for you if you do, those games are super pricey these days, or if you own a Switch, you can get them with the online functionality, or if you know the ways of the internet, you can get some copies another way. No matter the process you choose, unless you go the old school route and have a link cable, you're going to get real comfortable with the password system. Honestly, I would recommend playing both titles if you can make it a linked game, so you can, get the full experience, or maybe one half of the full experience. It doesn't really matter the first game you start with, though the overall consensus is to start with Seasons. You can start with Ages, but story-wise, over the grand scheme of both games, nothing really changes. At that point, really, it's just a matter of your preference as a player. When I played this for the first time, I started with Ages. My brother got Seasons. and when we beat our respective titles, we ended up swapping them to play the full adventure. It was a pretty good time, one I would recommend for those of you who like this type of Zelda game. This game stars the same Link from A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. Oh yeah, that's right, this version of Link is the only one to have 4 whole adventures. No other Link really gets close in that regard. Or does he? There is some conflicting information out there, mostly from those Hyrule Historia books, that claim that this Link is a whole new Link. But honestly, I think the general consensus is that this is the same Link from A Link to the Past. This game kicks off with Link on horseback with an orange sunset, clear blue type of sky. He was being summoned by the Triforce to go and help a nearby land. Some great evil was brewing, and Link has the power to stop it. With that, the Triforce sends Link to Labrynna, Holodrome, and to try to put a stop to whatever is going on. Upon arrival to this new land, Link runs into Impa, Zelda's handmaiden. She's being assaulted by 3 Octoroks. They scatter, though, once Link shows up. Impa thanks Link and asks to follow us for her safety. Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, Impa looks like she could use our help. She seems a bit blue? Odd choice for this game, but you know, alright. Moving on, we encounter a strange rock that has a triangle on it. Impa says we might be able to move it, and then she kinda backs away from it. Guess she doesn't really want to get in the way? Well, I mean, alright. With the rock moved, we move up and start to hear a song. It's a bit muffled, almost like it's just up a little further down the path, maybe. Side note, this was and might still be one of my favorite songs in the Zelda title. Is it fancy? No, maybe not. But I don't know, for some reason it just stuck with me as a kid, and even now, I can sit down and listen to this song for a good long while. Moving up, we see a girl singing to a bunch of forest animals and a guy. One of the animals moves over a little bit to let us in a little closer. We approach and we officially meet Din Nayru. The guy sitting with her is named Ralph. He let us know that they were expecting us and Impa. Impa, right, she fell back and starts talking a lot of smack. A ghost-like entity pops out of her, and despite Link and Ralph trying to stop it, the ghost ends up taking over Nayru. This ghost tells us her name is Varen, and that she could not have taken over Nayru without our help moving that rock that held a barrier up. Her plan was to gain control of Nayru, and then travel back in time and cast the world into darkness. Cover the land in a good, thick feeling of sorrow. She opens a portal and casts herself back in time. Cutscene plays out, and we immediately see the repercussions of her deeds. People, places, and animals start to disappear from the land. Perhaps even more ominous is the fact the temple sinks into the land. That a tower starts to appear, almost as if from nowhere, and pierce the sky. After that plays out, Ralph vows to stop Varen on his own, and he runs off ahead. Impa finally comes to, and she lets Link know that she was basically a prisoner in her own body. How terrible that was. Link gets his first sword from the Cave of Heroes, and she asks that you help resolve the calamity that has befallen this land. She goes off to Nayru's home to rest up for a bit. The game officially starts here. Heading into town, you can take a bit of time to explore the land and familiarize yourself with the people, the shops, and, well, the overall layout of the town. Eventually, you're going to wind up on the Maku Path, a way to get to the Maku Tree for guidance and help. She, the tree, begins to inform you about what's going on in the past as, well, she was around back then and has ages of knowledge to share. But then something's wrong. She starts to panic and eventually she fades away. Something happened to her in the past and you need to go and help her out. Moving over, you can find the same time portal that Varen opened up. Getting close to it, Ralph makes an appearance and once again rushes headlong into the unknown, vowing to save Nayru. Link follows. Entering the time portal, we see the land is different, but still somewhat similar? A guy makes note of how we arrived, and it was just like when that other weird guy showed up. Strange he didn't really mention Nayru, right? And the way he mentioned Ralph, who was just seconds before you entered the portal, made it seem like it happened recently, but not like one after the other. An odd thing for sure. Exploring the land a bit, you can see just how much the landscape has changed. Certain paths are gone, and/or new ones have opened up. The land feels old because of the color choices, and the way the buildings look just seems a bit, older somehow. Entering town, we can see just how much has actually changed. Lots of things are pretty different. Some buildings are in the same spots, others are new, and, certain areas or things just don't really exist yet. Like the shop, for example. Right now, it's just a bunch of trees and dirt mounds. After a bit of exploring, you can find a palace entrance. You can't get in, the guards won't let you, but it does belong to the queen of this land, Ambi. It's odd, though. No royal line existed in the current time period. In fact, her whole castle is just gone. One person tells you that there is a lot of dirt around town, and you can't really get anywhere without a shovel. Guess it's time to try and hunt one down. You won't be able to enter the Maku path without one, it seems. Here we get introduced to the Black Tower. Some of the villagers were talking about it. Most of the men in this village have been rounded up to help build it. Entering the area causes the music to change to a track that sounds foreboding and fairly ominous. Speaking with a guy at the entrance to the tower, he says to make any visit short and not to linger too long. They don't want to get yelled at by the guards. After a bit of exploring, you can find another guy who ends up giving you a shovel. Guess he thinks you're part of the construction team or something. Returning back to the town and digging your way to the Maku path, you enter the cave. It's different now, no longer the straight path it was. It acts sort of like a dungeon preview, giving you a small taste of what's to come. It's not really all that difficult, however. As well it shouldn't be. Exiting the path, you'll end up finding the Maku tree, only she's a sapling? She's being attacked by a couple moblins. They go down easily enough, but they seem to know you. Varen is actively attacking the known threats to her. After saving the Maku tree, she says she wants to repay you, but can't right now because, she's too small and doesn't really have the means to help. She does open the gate to her, though, so that's nice. And, she proposes to you? So, I guess, that's a thing. Once back in the present time, you enter the Maku tree area and speak with her again. She seems to have forgotten a bunch over the years, but she does remember you. She incorrectly remembers the promise, though, and, starts to hit on Link. After a bit of talking, she realizes that you're trying to save Nayru. She then gives you a seed satchel and tells you to check out a nearby graveyard. This is where the game really picks up on that standard Zelda formula for the most part. It's going to be a lot of go here, do this thing, then it's off to the next spot. Collect the 8 essences of nature. Time. What breaks it up slightly is the ability to venture back in time and talking with the villagers. Now, none of the static characters really do much of anything, standard fare as far as that's concerned, but some of the more interesting ones are part of the trading sequence, and that's back here as well. The animal buddies and this family who put the burden of childcare on you. Seriously, they ask you to name their kid. You can type anything, and they go for it. Enjoy that name, kid. Hope therapy is a thing in this land. You're gonna need it. Okay, but if you don't take the 13-year-old approach to naming, and you pop back in every now and again, you have the potential to get some really neat stuff. Eventually. With each area traversed and new dungeons felled, the Maku tree gains strength and is able to more accurately tell you what's happening. Every so often, little story vignettes play out. Nothing super out there really, just a bad guy doing bad things. Weirdly ominous vibes, and that tower that's stretching ever higher into the sky. Still, seeing Nayru trapped in crystal, her own body is upsetting. She enjoyed bringing peace to those around her, and now she's being forced to cause so much sorrow. She, under Varen's control, has caused the land to be stuck in perpetual day. No night, no rest. Time, back in the past, is at a standstill. Just all the more reason to power through and rescue Nayru. You'll encounter puzzles that require you to do a lot of time travel to figure them out. This can be a pain at first, as you can really only travel on designated spots, but as you progress, you can move more freely through time with new tunes. The theme of time is, realistically, symbolically represented in the essences of time. Spirits, flames, that one mountain way off in the distance and has always been there. The sea and the stars, all things that have existed throughout all of time, all things that have been used by generations for a variety of reasons. They have always been, and they will continue on. They are time immortal. The inspiration for these things comes from our shared history as humans, and they are ideas that will always exist. No one knows what is at the end of time, but maybe, even after the heat death of the universe, should the universe reset, these ideas will continue on. The essences of time, as seen by the human eyes, symbolic of our time, and the cycle continues. Thinking about it really makes you appreciate what nature, time, really is. On the subject of time, there are a few areas that really play well with how time travel works in this game. The few standouts I mentioned before were Crescent Island and the quest to get your stuff back. That whole island is just one large puzzle that spans both time periods. One of the best uses of the idea, as it forces you to use a limited list of items until you collect everything. The Goron Mountain, Rolling Ridge, and crazy amount of back and forth there. The Zora's City and how you save the king. More interestingly, though, is the Tarm Ruins, the Mermaid Dungeon. It's a part of the Rolling Ridge area, and it requires not only a ton of work to get into, as you need to do a bunch of stuff here, lots of mini-games and, well, side quests. Some more problematic than others, but at the end of it all, you get to do one of the cooler dungeons in the game. Honestly, it's something I wish they did more of. You need to travel back and forth through time to solve the whole dungeon. There were hints of this back around dungeon number 2, as you needed to enter it in the past, but no other dungeon really took on the idea of going back and forth in time to this logical endpoint. Honestly, no other dungeon in Zelda history did quite the same thing. Well, with exception, of course, the Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time. That was also really cool. It's a shame, really. Those types of time travel ideas are some of my favorites. There are a ton of side quests to do in this game, some more complicated than others, but the most important one involves the trading sequence. You're gonna want to solve that one so you can get the Noble Sword. Another more memorable spot in the game is Cemetery City. You need to go there for one of the dungeons, of course, but it's destroyed upon your first visit. Going back in time and fixing the Toonie Nut will save the city, but it requires you to explore the surrounding mountain and learn about the repairing ceremony. This is important information for later, as if you do complete the trading sequence, you'll need to come back here to repair that noble sword. At around the midpoint of the game, you're going to learn that Queen Ambi has stepped out of her castle and the guard is lower there than normal. This might be the best time to rescue Nayru. Ralph shows up and does what he does best, nothing, and then vows to save Nayru again. Baron has been doing the evil Vizier bit, filling Queen Ambi's mind with bad ideas and making her commit just the worst things possible in the name of finding her lost love. And going down, instead of the greatest queen in history, to the worst tyrant ever known. Infiltrating the castle isn't all that bad, though. Once you get through it, you'll end up fighting with Nayru. Varen has made it clear that you can't hurt her without actually killing Nayru or, whomever she possesses. If you were paying enough attention, though, you might have picked up on the fact that she doesn't really like mystery seeds. You gotta arm that seed shooter and let them fly. Hitting Nayru with those causes her to pass out, and Varen's ghost form pops out of her body. With some clever item use, you can remove her from Nayru and lay some smackdown. Do this a few times, and eventually Nayru gets freed. But then, Queen Ambi shows up, and Varen takes that opportunity. After a narrow escape back to the present time, Nayru and Ralph thank Link for the help, but the battle is far from over. One fun thing about the Oracle of Ages game is as the game progresses, the dialogue from certain townsfolk changes. The mayor, for example, has updated history to reflect what is going on in the story. After the queen gets possessed, in the history of the town, she's remembered as a terrible tyrant. Before that, though, when Nayru was around, she was being misled, and the history text reflects that. They mention Nayru, when presumably before then they wouldn't have. There's a lot of that, actually, in this game. Every area you go to has some tale of a young boy who did a thing, which asks the question, has all this happened already? After enough questing and collection of the essences, it's time to face down General Onox, Varen in the Black Tower. It's been slowly getting completed over the course of the game, finally reaching its max height, and even the people in the present day have taken notice of it. It exudes a negative energy that people feel. Link readies up and enters the tower in the past. Ralph shows up and is also ready to take on Varen, but something seems off. He isn't his usual overconfident self. He goes in anyway. Nayru and Impa show up moments later and inform you that Ralph is in fact a descendant of Queen Ambi. If she dies at any point, Ralph may not exist anymore. Erased from time, like the Maku tree was. Now it's a race to the top to fight Varen. The Black Tower has some interesting puzzles of its own. Nothing too out there, but some that require a bit of critical thinking. After getting to the top, you see Ralph squaring up against Varen, and he knows he might not make it out of this alive if he ends up killing Ambi. It doesn't really matter anyway, she tosses him aside like a doll she lost interest in. You chase her down and face off again, just like you did against Nayru, mystery seeds and all. After taking her down, Ambi comes to her senses and flees the area. Varen tries to take over Link, but he dodged her. Now you face off against Varen in her monstrous form. Some sort of twisted butterfly thing, or maybe even a moth? After a while, she goes down easily enough, though. Link, Ralph, and Nayru make a break for the exit. Varen tries one last time to stop everyone. Link manages to push both Ralph and Nayru out as he faces Varen alone. This time, she shifts into a few new forms, each one with its own powers and defenses. It's a proper 3-tier kind of fight. Varen falls finally, and peace is restored to the two time periods. Link gets a statue of himself and goes down in the history of Labrynna as a hero of the ages. In the end, though, it didn't even matter. No matter how hard he tried, it all fell apart. Varen might have died for the cause, but the cause was reached. She managed to sow so much destruction, sorrow through the land. Kotake and Koume are seen looking into a red flame, the flame of destruction. Blue flame, the flame of sorrow, created from all the pain Varen caused throughout time. Some other plot is happening, and really no one is any the wiser. This isn't the first time you see them. The Gerudo witches make their presence known as the story progresses, but until now they've seemed to be more of like a distraction of sorts from the main crisis at hand. Something else is definitely happening. Impa leaves for Holodrum on Zelda's orders. Link sticks around for a bit to make sure that both Nayru and Ralph are alright. Ralph ends up devoting himself more to protecting the Oracle of Ages, and just like that, Link is carried off to another adventure. This was not my first introduction to this game series, but it was one of the first ones I played. I think I started out with Ocarina of Time, and then went back and played the others in the series when that GameCube collection disc came out. So, I had almost no experience with 2D Zelda games and how they operate, and for the first one that I really sat down to play, turned out to be a Capcom-produced thing. I think that kind of sets expectations in a unique way. Nothing bad, but looking back now after playing most of the 2D titles and having just finished Link's Awakening for the first time really, this miniseries sticks out as just a little odd, but in a good way. There are definitely some points in this game that are more frustrating than fun. The Goron Dance Hall, for example. In fact, almost all of the Rolling Ridge area. All those minigames are not ideal time killers, and while I can see why they are there, to break up the game a bit at around the halfway point, they're a little more irritating than fun. Still, overall, the game is a great time. It may be a bit rough around the edges, but I can appreciate the fact that Capcom and Flagship tried to stretch the bounds of a Zelda game more than most might have tried. I like that this game was mostly original ideas and concepts, much more so than its sister game, which was a strange mix of Zelda 1 and some other random ideas. This one dared to be its own thing, and while it faltered here and there, at the end of the day, it benefits from having that bit of experimental thinking and those puzzle elements. It made an impact and left its own stamp on the Zelda timeline. Here, we have a choice to be made, O viewer mine. Do you continue Link's adventure? Take on the second quest in the land of Holodrum? Or would you rather start fresh in Holodrum? Change the flow of the world's seasons in a sense, and then return to Labrynna with new eyes. The choice you make will matter. The people you see, the events that play out, all of it falls on you at this moment. Make a choice, and I'll see you in that reality. Should you choose nothing, then your adventure stops here, and that land falls into ruin, with Hyrule soon to follow. Don't let the seasons change without you noticing.